morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this edition of the CMO Talk Series. I'm Krishnan Chatterjee. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Markets and Markets. And I'm joined today by a very distinguished guest who actually is not just a CMO, so a very dear friend and somebody I deeply respect, Mr. Sumit Mahajan, who is the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer for Datamatics. So Sumit, would you like to briefly introduce yourself to our viewers today?
Sure. So first, Krishnan, thanks a lot for inviting me to this fire chat session. I would have loved to be around and with the fire, but this is as good as it gets. But yeah, and first, this is a great initiative that you guys are running. I'm excited to be here. And as my background, been in the industry for 25 plus years, have a very varied background from engineering from IIT to MBA from IIM, and have done corporate banking to consulting to setting up businesses to, now here we are, again, talking about some exciting stuff in sales, marketing, and growth. I think, again, it's a privilege to be talking to you as well. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Sumit. So let's get into the discussion for the day. And why I was so keen, to have you on the show, Sumit, because you sort of straddle the two worlds that we are going to try and bridge today. So where all this began for us, Sumit, is, as Markets and Markets serves clients across the world on their quest for growth, we are increasingly finding a little shift in the way CMOs are thinking about their portfolio. And that specific shift is obviously in today's world, and increasingly in the current environment, as we look at recessionary conditions, driving simultaneous tightening of the belt, as well as seeking new avenues of growth. There is tremendous expectations the business has with the CMO for quality demand. And when we approach the subject of quality demand, we are discovering, this debate between what I personally call efficiency and effectiveness. So over the last decade or so, especially in the B2B world, CMOs have focused and done very well on efficiency matrices, including with MarTech technologies and processes and such like. To the extent today that the whole process of lead management, lead generation, programmatic buying, a whole host of things are happening on top of the funnel. But when I push this to the effectiveness debate, and the effectiveness debate is from the top of the funnel, are those leads qualifying, being recognized as valuable by sales teams, and finally closing into revenue? That's where there is a challenge. So I wanted to open this, Sumit, and as I said, you see both sides of the picture with your take on the efficiency versus effectiveness debate for marketers.
Right. Yeah, so I think, Krishnan, this is a great question, and I think you framed it very well. There are two aspects that you talked about. I think one is this marketing versus sales type of a thing, saying, okay, what's contributing more or less, which is sort of more of a long-term traditional debate. But I think the second aspect, which is interesting, is especially now as each of us is harnessing the MarTech stack way better, right? Is the element of hence marketing efficiency versus effectiveness, right? So is it really becoming more effective or not? And to exactly the way you introduced me was that, hey, since I, from my vantage point, I have all the elements of growth. So from sales, account management to pre-sales, which is BDR, SDR, and the marketing piece, I think I have thought through this in some, detail so that I can look at this with a different lens and saying, how can marketing be more effective while they are very efficient, right? with that thought in mind, what I did is I've sort of redesigned and realigned a sort of a progressive marketing scorecard. Okay, and as I define it, it'll answer some of what the way I think about this effectiveness, point. So at the number one point there is obviously for marketing, MQL, volume is number one, which is obviously top of the funnel, marketing qualified leads, which still remains there. But the second element, for example, is where I have the marketing head co-owning a revenue number. So in a way, in essence, my thought process is each of these growth engines, their core element why they exist is because they're driving growth. And for marketing, if you want to contribute sort of directly, indirectly, there is no better filter than saying, okay, this is the amount of dollars that I'm driving to the bottom line through all the marketing channels. So, and there is a number that sits on the marketing head's head owning it, right? So that's the number two. The number three is about, I have a matrix of LTV by CAC. Okay, so now I am saying, one is saying, okay, how much is the, this year's revenue? But again, I'm redefining that to saying, also looking at a lens of LTV and also saying that you ought to own the operating model of your channels as well. So that's where, CAC comes in as well, right? So that's the number three. The number four is the MQL velocity. Again, my definition of MQL velocity, just to be clear, is saying not at the rate at which MQLs are entering the funnel, but at what rate MQLs that have entered the funnel are getting converted into sales dollar. So in a way, I'm saying I am putting a dollar number, I'm putting a timestamp, and I'm putting long-term value into this effectiveness funnel. And then I'm wrapping this all around with co-ownership and collaboration aspect, which holds for marketing, it holds for sales as well, because I'm trying to build an ecosystem which effectively is all about sales dollars.
Sumit, I think that's a fabulous operating model. Obviously, many marketers across the world would love to learn more about it. But as you describe the model, sort of three questions struck me, and I'll go one by one. The first is, the model actually defines very well the what. And you have framed the what in terms of aligned to revenue, velocity through the pipe, and customer lifetime value. The question is how? How should a marketer who is right now, if you look at the typical engine, sort of a beaten pass guy. So, I'm running a 400-meter relay as the marketer. I pass the baton to the sales guy. He or she runs the next 400 meters. But in many ways, if you want me now to have this overarching view across the entire funnel and therefore drive, revenue outcomes, speed through the funnel, so on and so forth, I'm running with the baton, with the next runner to see how I can get into that stage of the process, which obviously means I burn energy that I could otherwise be using in my 400-meter run. So how should a marketer actually manage that entirety of the funnel in the way that you have described?
Right. Yeah, and I think you've hit a nerve because I'm actually a runner. I'm actually an inter-IIT gold medalist, so I actually have a lot of passion about this topic. But I think but the way you framed it again, Krishnan, I think is great because again, the what is the easy part of it. The how is the difficult part of it, and that how has 2-3 elements of this. And in a way, let's stick to that example that you're saying, is that when we are running, there are 2 types of pieces that can be built in. So when we are practicing, okay, to your point, when we are running together, we call somebody called a pacer. Okay, so what that basically, the pacer is setting the strides for the main runner, and so that you can ensure that speed is built up. And so to that example or analogy is that when we together are building this mechanism, we have to work together a lot, meaning sales and marketing actually have to work together, because each of them have to understand what the other is going to contribute as these things go through the funnel. So that is the pacing element that is very critical, because without it, it will actually create an ecosystem that will create a lot of chaos in the system, right? So I think that part is where me owning it, plus having guys that can run at that pace is important, and understand each other's responsibility is important. I think that's first element. The second part of that analogy is that, to your point, if I'm marketing, I've handed the baton to the sales guy. And right now, in our current mechanism, it is the sales guy that owns that run, exactly the way you said, hey, I've given you the baton. Now you are supposed to make sure you make the most and go at the fastest pace for that 400 meters. What you have to realize is the marketing guy, since he's co-owning that, what he will do is he will not run stride by stride, but he will come back. So in a way, when we run, since it's a circle, he runs across and actually pushes that guy to saying, hey, you can do it. So in a way, if I draw to the business parallel, I'm saying at that time, this guy would actually be co-owning it. So when we have our regular calls, the marketing guy is there in the sales review calls and is asking, okay, this lead, the way we handled it, it seemed, you said it was a very hot lead. Now it's been 2 weeks. What's happened? He has a seat at the table to be able to co-own that. So I think that is the mechanism that is being put in place. And the third part, as all of us know, is this element that it is essential for all of us to be, have a matrix inside our KPIs that gives us this thing that, okay, it's not a good to have, but it is essential to have, because it will help me close more dollars. Again, both of them have a sales revenue number in that KPIs, and both of them have a collaboration KPI, which can help them feel that, okay, if they do right, it'll give them a win-win for both parties.
Fantastic, Sumit. So let me push that collaboration idea a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So if I do the math, Sumit, in the world of B2B, typically SG&A spends are anywhere between 15 and 25% of the P&L. Mm-hmm. In which, if I'm not mistaken, depending on businesses, marketing may be 1.5%, 2%, but the sales cost in SG&A is typically, say, 14, 15, 16%. Uh-huh. So actually, if a marketer, I was to take a P&L perspective of these two functions, sales is a 10x investment on what you would typically do in B2B and marketing. Consequently, the question I would ask is not just one of collaboration, but actively, if marketing were to see sales as a channel for marketing, then the amount of productivity and effectiveness it could drive logically would be high, because now you have co-opted a 10x investment channel, as opposed to, say, digital and social and email marketing and all the other stuff you do. You've got a 10x channel available to you. Now, A, do you agree with that thinking? And B, if so, what could marketing do to actually co-opt sales as a marketing channel itself?
Yeah. And again, great question, Krishnan. So first is I agree. First, I think in a way, the thought process as you defined it is, the standard thought processes of thinking of sales either as a client or, something like that, which is basically handing off and then letting them. Here, what we are saying is it is a channel. And in a way, since we think of it as a channel, I own that, sort of co-own that channel. I think, see, similar to social, etc., right? The idea is here to saying that if you think of this as an end-to-end continuum, and you are thinking of this as the end element is not about the baton handoff, but is of winning, then your whole mindset changes. And to your exact element, the thought process is then you are working together with both parties, the baton hander as well as the guy that's going to run the next lap, so that you are ensuring that you are still having the core element of revenue in your mindset. You're owning that channel. So I mean, in summary, I agree with that. And I think the thought process, again, we can call it a channel, we can call it a continuum, we can call it a sales pipeline in a way, which is co-owned. But at the end of the day, thought process is effectiveness is driven by ensuring sales revenue.
Got it. So now let's flip it around. So I've been talking through the lens of the marketer.
Yeah.
So actually, collaboration is always premised on value. You and I will collaborate because both of us see value in each other. So if you were to look at it through the lens of the salesperson, what would you describe as the key aspects of value that marketing could bring to your life so that the two of you become co-owners of the revenue process?
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect segue into saying, hey, we've looked at one lens, let's look at the other side of that same discussion. And so now I think there are many elements that marketing can clearly contribute to, which are obvious to the sales folks. So now, from a sales perspective, I think the quality of leads is a key element of the whole funnel. Now, if and as the marketers are able to understand the buying cycle, the end-to-end buying cycle, not the customer acquisition cycle, as they are able to understand that element better, they will be able to both do better justice to all the communications and the outgoing messaging that is going in. That is number one. Number two is when they are part of this discussion of challenging or thinking through along with sales, they will have a much more informed view, because of which sales will be able to see how they are able to ensure velocity. Again, the point out here is marketing can do more for sales by doing three things right. Number one, the foundation, which is the top of the funnel, they ought to strengthen that. The quality of leads coming in, the ICP that they are trying to create, the business value prop that they're trying to create, that part they have to do a better job of. Second is, I think, is when they are working with sales, I think there is a way for sales and marketing to contribute when we talk about velocity, and that's why that was an important element. If I as marketing see that, hey, sales is not moving, then sales can come back to me and say, hey, you know what, let's roll this back into a drip campaign. Given that I've worked on this, but I see it's not moving, you guys said this was a very good lead, I will give it back to you. And why don't you ensure that there is an uplift and then you pass it back to me? So there is through the middle of the funnel, there is a collaboration and co-ownership that happens. And the last part of it is, in all of this, if marketing is trying to create a long-term value, there is a humongous amount of branding that can help them actually give that to sales. So again, the point is, if I as a sales leader, when I walk in or I'm at a conference, etc., and if there is a brand recognition that happens, that by default, especially for small and medium enterprises, right? I'm not talking about the Googles and the Amazon, but all of us in the ecosystem. For us, that is a key value that branding, marketing can give to the salesperson that a salesperson himself or herself can't. So I think there's a lot of foundation, sort of robustness across the funnel, and then branding that marketing can gives to sales.
So if I would, and Sumit, I'm still, sort of pushing you on that how piece for now the marketer to think about this. So as you were speaking, a couple of things were striking me on the value continuum, as it were. The first is the criticality of the campaign, and therefore the ability of marketers to actually design campaigns end to end, including, so let me give you an example that struck me from your perspective, right? So, you are taking the power of data into the cloud to drive, say, new business models. And today, one of the hot things coming up is with the introduction of 5G, the whole aspect of remote patient monitoring is now going to be an explosive sort of area and entirely amenable to, let's say, a utility that Datamatics could be driving. So consequently, spotting these opportunities, building campaigns around them, and driving such propositions through that entire channel, is that one how that you think could be useful for marketers to start thinking of? Because I'm bringing the proposition part into also your ask as far as the brand is concerned. So don't just think about the brand as a very generic item, but a very, very specific value statement into targeted markets. Would that be one of the hows that might
Yeah.
trigger what you're saying?
Yeah, no, and I think, yeah, and that's well framed, Krishnan. So that in a way, when I talk about saying marketing should be able to understand the business and the vision and the mission, I think these are the elements that marketing can make the how happen in a much more strategic way, right? And to see, there are, when we are debating this, I think the point where I started off with is saying that right now, that first there has to be a clear definition. That's the reason I wanted to first go there, right? From my perspective, I told you that definition is revenue. Then second, I'm trying to say on a day-to-day basis and an annual basis, how can marketer become more involved and contribute to that effectiveness? And the third element to where you're going is saying, and in that how element, there is that level where marketer can take on a vision and a mission of the company, which a salesperson, because a salesperson is more focused on saying, I'm trying to close an opportunity, versus now to that branding element. Now the marketer is actually understanding that, hey, this is the next big wave that will happen, and is taking that on to drive the complete organization to a new level, right? So I think that's a brilliant example. I'll give you another example to that same thought process, right? Now, for a marketer at this juncture, the whole element of cookie deprecation that is happening is going to be perhaps one of the biggest things that will change, where your complete lead gen piece, your complete intent piece, all of those elements are changing, right? And again, to your example, so I mean, we as an organization are actually working with all the large to small B2B companies to actually redesign and realign that strategy. And if you think about it, that's something we are looking into the future. We can see that wave coming. Marketing is actually working because it is core to marketing in a way, they understand it best, but also as a business proposition for the organization, we can actually create a much bigger strategic layer, which can create something totally new as a brand, as a company, and as a organization. So absolutely perfect.
So Sumit, I think you've given me my biggest takeaway from this session.
Right.
And what I was looking for, right? What's the one idea? Marketers are idea people.
Right.
And the idea I'm
Absolutely.
taking away from everything you said is, as a marketer, when you walk back into office tomorrow after listening to what Sumit had to say, my sense is start focusing on discontinuities. And in the industry, in the business, there are a proliferation of discontinuities in our disruptive world. And if you can pick the right discontinuity for your organization and build addressable market numbers around it, and then integrate that with the propositions that your organization has and take it through the entire funnel, you will be able to, as Sumit was saying, start defining your value in terms of revenue and not just leads. And I think to me, Sumit, that was the biggest takeaway from everything you said.
Also, thanks, Krishnan. You framed it very well, and and I think for marketers, at the end of the day, MarTech is what we have. Content is king. Again, some of the redefinition of Google Analytics that is happening as we speak, right? So I'm just saying, I think the more we can focus on the core, as you talked about, and disruptions rather than tactical stuff, I think you're the kings. So let's go there.
Fantastic, Sumit. Sumit, thank you so much for your time today and these lessons. And I know as this series goes through, our audiences, aspirational marketers across the world are going to have many learnings, but none as important as the one you have shared today.